Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll get started here in just a minute. Okay, I have 2 o'clock Eastern time, so we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Kaya Swift. I'm the Marketing Director for Hel Consulting. Today's presentation is From Razor's Edge to Salesforce, a look inside the new nonprofit cloud. Before we get started, a couple of quick housekeeping things. All of your attendee lines are muted, so if you have a question throughout today's presentation, please go ahead and drop that in the question box. Today's webinar will run until 3 p.m. Eastern time, and a recording will be sent to you tomorrow. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our two speakers today. First is Tessa Boyce. Tessa, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself and the work you do here at Hel Consulting?
Yeah, absolutely. As Kaya said, my name is Tessa Boyce. I'm a consultant here at Hel. I joined the team back in 2022 after spending more than 6 years working in development and volunteer management at a food bank. And I am part of Heller's Salesforce practice, and I work on a wide variety of strategy and implementation projects.
Awesome. Welcome, Tessa. And we're also joined today by my colleague, Jennifer. Jennifer, could you please tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure thing. As you can see on the screen, my name is Jennifer Thal. I'm the business lead for the Salesforce practice here at Hel Consulting, which means that I'm a member of our senior leadership team. I currently oversee the whole team of Salesforce consultants and our whole portfolio of Salesforce projects. I've been with Hel Consulting for just shy of 10 years now, almost at the 10th anniversary. So that means that I've seen a lot of different Salesforce projects of different shapes and sizes over those years. And it also means that I've seen a lot of change from Salesforce itself in that time. There's been, products have risen and fallen in the Salesforce ecosystem. There's always newcomers to the scene. It's an ever expanding and changing Salesforce ecosystem, and that includes the nonprofit ecosystem within it. So I'm excited to be able to talk about some of the most recent changes in the newest iteration that is Salesforce for nonprofits today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jennifer. Before we get into today's agenda, I'll just give you all a little bit of context about who is Hel Consulting and why are we talking about this today. We've been in the nonprofit technology world since 1996, and we've been an official Salesforce partner since 2008. We've implemented Salesforce for hundreds of organizations over those years, many of which I've worked with Jennifer and Tessa. And we've been doing projects guiding folks through strategy work, implementation, and then post-launch support. And we have a team of people across the United States and Canada. All of them come from nonprofit backgrounds, and all of them have certifications in project management, change management, and of course, those technical Salesforce certifications. And we're proud to only serve nonprofit and higher education institutions. We are a certified B Corporation, and we consider ourselves to be a values-driven and DEI-focused company with several internal initiatives to increase belonging and inclusion for our staff and our clients. So with that, today's agenda, we've got a lot packed into the hour, but we're excited to get going with you all. First, we're going to talk about the challenges of Razor's Edge. We're going to talk about Salesforce's evolution and how we've come to this new nonprofit cloud product. And then we're going to talk about the key parts of that new nonprofit cloud, talk about the benefits of that new nonprofit cloud. And then Tessa is going to take us through a live demo so that you all can see inside of nonprofit cloud. And last, we'll have about 10 minutes at the end of the hour to wrap up and answer your questions that you have throughout today's presentation. And I know many of you also submitted questions ahead of time, so we will do our best to answer all of those. So I'll start off with why organizations are using Razor's Edge in the first place. We hear from folks that They're using Razor's Edge because it was there when they got started at the organization. It has incredible longevity in the marketplace and has for a really long time been the standard within organizational development offices. And so folks have built their development practices around the nomenclature and the naming and the way that the tool works. Often at nonprofits, staff members are comfortable using this tool, and in some ways, that's a great thing. You could go throughout your career to different organizations, and people knew how to get work done using Razor's Edge. And it also has a really strong core competency in some of the traditional fundraising work that we need to do in managing campaigns, direct response, batch gift entry, things like that. And it wouldn't have been around for so long if it didn't do some of those things really, really well. We also know that it's hard to make a change, that it takes time and planning and effort. And so for a lot of organizations, just making it, one more year, one more deduplication, one more, thing that we could do to squeeze a little bit more efficiency out of Razor's Edge, sometimes that feels like the better choice at the time than trying to go through the effort of making a technology change. But we also hear from organizations a lot of the pain points that start to spur them to that change and make them start looking around more broadly and say, is there anything out there in the market that could do better for us than what Razor's Edge can do right now? And some of the big complaints that we hear are around the innovation within the product itself, that as fundraising has become more complex, as we're doing more multi-channel, more diversified fundraising, more creative types of campaigns, and we need new and different functionality, that the tool itself just hasn't kept up. There's also not as robust of a roadmap to address these new types of fundraising. The tool doesn't give a lot of opportunities for customization. So if you're trying to do something new, you're still kind of stuck with the tools that you have. And maybe you can get Razor's Edge to do something in a slightly different way, but there's only so much that you can do. And because Razor's Edge isn't that customizable, it can be difficult to collaborate with other departments within your nonprofit and intake other types of information so that you might want to be using for something like segmentation or segmenting your donors. And so it has a limiting factor in what you can use it with. That overall sophistication, that sense that it hasn't kept up with more modern and diversified ways of fundraising. There are also challenges with integration, particularly with integrating online fundraising tools, and getting that data into the system can be really challenging. There's some user interface challenges, sometimes having to move back and forth between different screens. And then the last thing I'll reference is security. That's something that as fundraisers, you don't want to have to be thinking about every day. And we kind of rely on tools to be secure and take care of that for us. But with the security breach back in 2020, that really forced a lot of organizations to confront whether or not the technology they're using is secure with their donor information. So if those pain points have become strong enough, we can also think of them as opportunities. What is the opportunity if you were to go out and find a tool that would empower you to do those new and different types of fundraising strategies? And the great news is that there are more and more options in the marketplace right now, which is allowing organizations to be intentional and find tools that are better fitting their needs and better allowing them to engage in the types of fundraising strategies that are the right mix for them. So I wanted to share how Heller thinks about that marketplace when we go out and survey it, and the types of strategies we see nonprofits deploy when they adopt a CRM solution. And we look at that in a distinction between product versus platform. Razor's Edge would fall into that product category. It's a fixed tool, out of the box, it either does a certain thing or it doesn't. That comes with that integration and customization challenges that we talked about earlier. And then for some organizations, a product like Razor's Edge is meeting their needs perfectly fine. But if your needs are changing, that could become a problem over time. The other approach is a platform, and that is where Salesforce falls. Salesforce has built a foundational layer that acts as that base, and then other vendors build upon it over time. For nonprofits, you could put together a combination of applications and integrations and other tools. You're able to build an ecosystem that's going to meet all of those different fundraising needs, and this strategy has a lot of flexibility. A challenge to keep in mind with Salesforce is that you often have to take greater ownership over the system. There could be a need for a dedicated Salesforce administrator, somebody who is keeping up with the system. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jennifer to talk more about the evolution of Salesforce.
All right. So especially for those of you who are coming from the Razor's Edge or other systems, this is really just to give you a really simplified recap of why we're here talking about this today and now, and what has happened in the recent past to lead up to where we are now. So a brief history lesson. Back in 2008, that was when the Nonprofit Starter Pack, which was Salesforce's original nonprofit specific offering on that Salesforce platform. At that point in time, a group of nonprofit community users and Salesforce users got together. They had kind of created this really homegrown solution that ultimately solidified into the Nonprofit Starter Pack in 2008. Early on in Salesforce's history, Salesforce has always been dedicated to supporting the nonprofit sector. And so they've also been donating the first 10 Salesforce licenses for free for nonprofits and educational institutions, and they sell additional Salesforce products at a discount. So they've always been very dedicated to the nonprofit sector. And this was the first time that NPSP existed and really fell under Salesforce's wings as a product that they were supporting directly. Over the years, NPSP got a lot of enhancements. So it kept getting built out and built out over time in order to accommodate and meet more and more nonprofit use cases, starting with fundraising at its core, and eventually branching out into additional related apps such as volunteers or program management or outbound funds management. So there's a kind of cluster of related apps and that are to accommodate different nonprofit uses. And by 2016, really calling this a starter pack was a little bit of a misnomer. The product had definitely expanded enough and was mature enough and was used by enough organizations that Salesforce relaunched it in 2016 as the Nonprofit Success Pack, because it really did represent enough of the core functional areas or business process areas that most nonprofits need to accommodate in a CRM system. And it was pretty great. It still does a lot of things very, very well. And as of last year, Salesforce claims that there's over 250,000 nonprofit organizations around the world that are using NPSP successfully. So over those, over the last 10, 15 years, NPSP has really taken hold as a really robust solution to accommodate a lot of nonprofit functionality on that powerful Salesforce platform. But because Salesforce is a company that's really dedicated to innovation and always expanding its product offerings and enhancing its product offerings, in 2023, Salesforce launched a new nonprofit cloud. So if you hear us refer to NPC or nonprofit cloud or new nonprofit cloud throughout the rest of today's webinar, we're talking about the brand new offering that was launched just last year. And it's different than the NPSP offering that predated it. We're not going to go super into the weeds about the differences between Salesforce's old offerings and this new nonprofit cloud offering. We're trying more to focus on what are the features and benefits of the new nonprofit cloud offering, and especially if you're not using Salesforce at all yet and you're still using the Razor's Edge or a different system to manage your fundraising. But the really big benefit of this new nonprofit cloud is it has a lot of new features. It's being rapidly developed and expanded and enhanced by Salesforce. It has brought the nonprofit vertical into the Salesforce like industries cloud vertical within Salesforce, which what that really means for you all, for nonprofit organizations, is that nonprofit orgs are now getting access to tools and features and functions within Salesforce that have always been kind of closed off to us in the past. So it's opening the door to new features and functionality and new space for innovation, both coming from Salesforce directly, and now that we have new tools available to us, we as a sector can create some of that innovation ourselves. So that's what we're really looking at today, is now that there's this new tool in place, what does it do? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What are some of the things included in it? And how do I know where to start? So as Kaya mentioned, we start to think about Razor's Edge as a product and Salesforce as a platform. So I do just want to expand on that NPSP, the prior Salesforce offering, and Nonprofit Cloud, the new Salesforce offering, just to describe the differences a little bit. I'm not going to go super into the technical details here, but if you've heard about Salesforce nonprofits, or if any of you are currently using NPSP, or you have peers in other organizations who are using NPSP, NPSP is what's called a managed package, and it is basically installed into your Salesforce environment in order to get access to all of these nonprofit specific features and functions that Salesforce has offered for years. The difference between NPSP and new nonprofit cloud is that the new nonprofit cloud is built directly into the Salesforce platform. So there's no longer any extra installation step or process in order for organizations to gain access to these features. If you are on NPSP and you're interested in the new nonprofit cloud, those features aren't automatically available in your org. Like, it does require some licensing and provisioning from Salesforce directly, but there's nothing sitting on top of your Salesforce instance in the way that NPSP and the prior packages have existed in the past. And like I mentioned a moment ago, this change to moving more of the features and functions into the core platform layer is also what has opened the door to some new features that are not even necessarily nonprofit specific, but they provide functionality that any kind of organization can take advantage of. So we are going to talk about some of those features today. There's also other features that are rapidly coming down through the roadmap. And what I'm more excited about than anything else for like the rest of 2024 and beyond is, as more and more nonprofits start using the new nonprofit cloud, and as they all gain access to these new features, I'm really excited to start seeing the best practices that get established and the innovation and creativity that comes directly from real life organizations trying to solve real life problems with now a bigger and broader and enhanced tool set at their hands. All right. So as of today, this circle graph represents each of the key functional areas that are live today in the new nonprofit cloud. So we are going to give just a really brief overview of some of the highlights and features of these different functional areas. None of them are going to get a super deep dive, but we are going to focus a little bit more on fundraising as kind of the backbone of just about any nonprofit organization ever. And as a good comparison piece to if you're using Razor's Edge today, the fundraising functions in the new nonprofit cloud are going to be what you're going to want to evaluate first, because those are how you replace Razor's Edge functions, is starting with fundraising, which isn't to say that you have to start implementing nonprofit cloud by going fundraising first. That's a whole other topic, but we do want to help organizations make some comparisons to what you have in place in RE today and what you can get with Salesforce and what's similar or different and how they compare. All right. So program tracking. So program tracking is, of course, an area that Raiser's Edge just doesn't really address at all. That's not what Raiser's Edge was designed to do, maybe with the exception of the volunteer module if you're using that and that's what your programs look like or what they leverage. But Salesforce Nonprofit Cloud does have a whole dedicated program set of functionality, and it's available out of the box. So in general, it allows nonprofit organizations to define what are our programs? What do we do as an organization? What types of benefits or services do we provide? Who are our constituents and how do they connect to those programs and benefits and services? You can enroll those constituents or their households in your programs, track their attendance or their participation over time, and of course, you can always report on all of the above. One feature that I really like is some scheduling capabilities here. So if there's things like if you deliver classes or coaching sessions or anything that is happening on a repeatable schedule, those are the types of situations that can become a really big drain on your staff time and resources, and it requires a lot of data entry, and it's often done manually or in spreadsheets, and it's easy to get things wrong and it's hard to get things right and hard to do it quickly. Salesforce has features to allow like mass management of creating the schedules, enrolling participants en masse so that a bunch of participants can be added to that schedule instead of having to add them to, say, a financial coaching class or a food distribution event one session at a time. You're able to schedule them for, whatever duration is appropriate for your programming. And then all you have to do is just track any sort of walk-ins that were not scheduled in advance, or track their actual attendance as those dates come up in the calendar, and you can actually track who showed up or who was a no-show. So that's definitely one of the enhancements that folks are going to be able to leverage, and it'll take a lot of kind of manual staff time out of that program management process. Case management. So this is another area that Raiser's Edge also just doesn't really accommodate out of the box, and Salesforce Nonprofit Cloud does have out of the box case management features. So this is really geared towards any type of organization that's providing direct service to some sort of constituent. There might be different variations on that, whether you are a food bank or whether you interact with people experiencing homelessness or people, any sort of direct, person-to-person interactions from your nonprofit working directly with individuals. So all of these features are really geared towards making a caseworker's job easier and more efficient and effective, so that they can quickly guide constituents through intake for the first time, as well as assess their status to see if additional interventions or referrals are needed as time progresses and as they interact with the caseworker and any other program or services that they might be receiving from your org or from other orgs. There's a cool participant profile feature that helps those caseworkers easily see like what progress are these constituents making. They'll all have personalized care plans so that you can see like, are they tracking against what we want them to achieve, or certain milestones that you can define. And you're also able to see a client timeline of, important life events or service delivery or caseworker touch points. So you really have a holistic view of those individuals that you're serving. And the case management features that I'm describing here are all interconnected with the program management features that I mentioned a moment ago. So they're not like discrete, separate sections of the system. They're designed to interact with one another so you can easily see like which individuals are receiving case management support from or connected to which programs, and are they enrolled in just one program or multiple programs, depending on, eligibility criteria and so forth. and outcomes management. So this is actually a brand new feature. There was no equivalent feature in the legacy Salesforce packages, so I'm really excited to see how nonprofits pick this one up and start using it in real life. Of course, all nonprofits have a mission. They're trying to accomplish something out there in the world, and they typically have some sort of theory of change that defines if we deliver X or accomplish Y, it's going to have some sort of impact on the goals that they're trying to achieve. And so these outcome management features exist out of the box in NPSP and NPC, Freudian slip, and they will let a nonprofit define like what outcomes are we trying to achieve and what do we need to measure along the way in order to ensure that we're actually making progress, that we're actually doing what we set out to do. And it's okay if we have to course correct, like things happen in the world outside of our control, but in general, this is all around mission measurement and helping nonprofits do that more effectively and more efficiently. So I really expect that these features are going to be super, super helpful when it comes to grant reporting, like whatever commitments you have from foundations or other funders, and they want to know like, what have you done with the money? These will really help with the grant reports to report back to them on your impact and on your successes, or just what have you achieved over what time span, as well as just genuine annual report writing. So, you know, every year you want to report out to your own constituents, your own donors. You want people to understand this is the impact that we're having in the world or in our like ecosystem. And this is why, you know, we're good at what we do and we want to be really proud of that. All of those types of report backs to different types of audiences are really going to be made easier and more effective by using these outcome management features. And I also really hope that having these features and using them regularly instead of just once a year when annual report season comes around will help nonprofits have real-time data around how are we doing? What does our progress to date look like? Do we need to make any course corrections in the way that we're delivering a certain program or a certain service so that we can keep moving the needle in the direction we want to? So I'm really excited to see how nonprofits start, you know, utilizing these features that haven't existed in the past.
All right, so as you can see, we are creeping close to fundraising. We're starting to get some dollars involved. The next module we're going to talk about is our grant making module. So for organizations that are providing grants, providing funds out to the community, this is going to be a way to track those programs in general funding areas, so such as, you know, food access or protecting the environment, and then being able to create associated funding opportunities, so specific grant awards that are available. This particular module comes with a portal that's accessible to external users, so grant seekers can then submit applications. The organization is able to, you know, define what is necessary as part of that application. The grant seekers are able to, you know, submit budgets as well through that portal. And then the officers and the other folks who are reviewing those grants within the organization, they can track, you know, reviews by separate and multiple team members of those applications, so get multiple people's opinion. And then able to track the final decision about who is going to win that particular award. This module is able to track kind of the total amount awarded as well as the individual disbursements that are tracking the actual funds distributed to the organizations. And then there's also functionality to track any deliverables that are being asked of the grant seekers. So making sure that you have, you know, what information is needed to be included in those deliverables, when are they due, and there's some really great collaboration features with this particular module having that external portal, so you can work really closely with the organizations that you're providing funds to. One important thing that we want to note about this module is that it's the only major functional area that we're covering today that's not included in the standard nonprofit cloud SKU. This is kind of separate because of that portal feature. There's different licensing for having external users than there is to just be managing your internal users. And so it's going to work a little bit differently. And so there's separate licensing involved there. The next module we're going to take a look at is our accounting subledger. This serves as the bridge between our fundraising data and our finance and accounting data in order to reduce reconciliation time and increase transparency between those teams, everyone who's working with the funds being received by an organization. This module creates records to represent the debit and credit journal entries in order to track revenue and expenses. This happens both on initial receipt of gifts, but then this module is also going to monitor all of that gift data for any adjustments that would have an impact for finance, and then regenerate those debit and credit entries as necessary, so that there's just really close alignment. I think that's key in order to work well in between our fundraising teams and then our accounting teams. We want to make sure that everything ends up where it's expected. And then this fundraising functional area is where kind of the focus of the remainder of our time is going to be today. This is really focused on 3 main apps that are organized around 3 personas or roles within a fundraising team. So I'm going to talk about each of these, and then this is what we're going to hop into the system and take a look at. The first of our apps is our mass market engagement, or our donor engagement. The persona that would kind of have purview over this app is going to be, for example, a director of annual fund. This is really focused on how an organization's broader giving audience is solicited, and so it's really focused on planning your campaign strategy, focusing on kind of those different appeals that you're sending out, and then tracking campaign success. So having information easily summarized to see a campaign's response rate, total donations, total unique donors, getting all of that information really easy to view. Out of the box, there's lots of reports and different ways that you can segment your donors and get them added to the appropriate campaigns. But then Nonprofit Cloud also offers an optional add-on connection using a tool called Data Cloud that can provide even more nuanced segmentation to really find the correct target audience for any given campaign that's going out. The next app that we're going to take a look at is our high-touch fundraising. This is also known as Philanthropy and Partnerships. Our main persona for this app is going to be, for example, a major giving officer, someone who's really focused on managing a curated portfolio of donors and using moves management to move prospects through the different stages of stewarding major or planned gifts. This can also be used to track kind of grant opportunities when your organization is the one seeking those out. It has a lot of functionality around creating donor profiles and really understanding how to best build a relationship with these select individuals or organizations that are going through a more of a personalized cultivation process. So that includes things like tagging their funding interests, really planning out your stewardship with these donors, as well as really focused on tracking your interactions with these individuals. The last app we're going to take a look at today is our Fundraising Operations. Our persona for this app is going to be a gift processor, so someone who's really focused on processing received funds, whether that's individually or in batch. Someone who's focused on ensuring the accuracy of gift data in the system and then providing kind of customer support to our donors. I want to really quickly highlight Nonprofit Cloud's gift data model by reviewing kind of 3 of the core main objects that we're going to see and talk about once we get into the system. The first is going to be our opportunity object. If you've heard anything about how fundraising works in Salesforce, you've probably heard gifts talked about as opportunities. This object was wearing a lot of hats in the in NPSP, and so it represented a lot of different types of giving. In Nonprofit Cloud, it's really been focused down to only represent the possibility of a major or planned gift, or again, a grant opportunity, a gift where you need to really track those stages of securing a commitment over an extended period of time. The next object we're going to talk about is the gift commitment object. So once there is an actual commitment to give funds, that is when this gift commitment object comes into play, because it's going to be really used to track the logistics of receiving those funds, such as an installment schedule. So this could be a formal or a written commitment, or it could be more of a verbal non-binding commitment. There is kind of functionality that's tied between the fundraising module and then that accounting subledger module to ensure that only the appropriate gifts are counted as revenue depending on the accounting method that you use. So these gift commitment records could potentially be the follow-up to an opportunity. So if this is a pledge commitment being made after soliciting a major gift, or they can be used without an opportunity, such as tracking a recurring donation that someone commits to, not necessarily something that was specifically cultivated, but involves a commitment to a giving schedule, and you want to be able to track those logistics before money is actually received. And then the last object we'll take a look at is going to be our gift transaction. So that represents when money is actually received by the organization. This is going to hold the specifics about how that was, what the method was for receiving that, and really details of those specific funds. And so again, these could be potentially associated with a commitment if this is, for example, a pledge payment, or they can be kind of your one-off standalone gifts. Next, we are going to head into our demo and take a look at what these apps look like in the new Nonprofit Cloud.
Awesome. Thank you, Tessa. While Tessa's pulling up her screen here, I just want to make sure I got a note that there was some sound quality issues. If attendees watching, if sound is okay for you, if you wouldn't mind just dropping that in the question box of a thumbs up or yes, okay. I want to make sure you all can hear the demo before we get started. Appreciate it. Okay, great. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Fantastic. So I'm going to start by showcasing how different apps out of the box have different home pages, again, really customized for those different types of users, those personas that we've been talking about, so that folks, when they're logging in, are seeing the information that's most immediately relevant to their role and what they need to be able to do in the system. So we are going to start again in this donor engagement app that is going to be really focused again on, for example, our director of annual fund, really focused on, again, these campaigns, the metrics of how they're performing. We can see it at the top right here. This is going to be one of our dashboards. One thing I want to note is that everything that we're reviewing today is what a brand new Nonprofit Cloud instance looks like. It's pretty much all out of the box. I'll call out when there have been minor customizations made, but that one of the core strengths of Salesforce is how customizable everything is. So we could easily switch, what reports are getting pulled in here, different dashboards, and there's just a lot of customization that can happen. One of the things that is nice about our dashboards is that, this is showing us summarized information. These are actually both pulling from the same report, but showing this information a little bit differently. And we can really easily navigate from one of these dashboards into the core data. So you can really easily get between different records and just different views of the information you're looking for. And so we can see here's how that, that chart was being generated. And if we jump into one of our campaigns, we're going to take a look at what these records look like. So we've got kind of our highlights up here at the top, the key information we need to know about any given campaign. And then we've got our outreach summary. So this is going to be summarized information based off of the different gifts that are connected to these campaigns. These are, again, customizable. These are just the summaries that are provided out of the box. But if there's different information you want to be seeing, that is absolutely an option. We have some tracking information down here about, different values of the campaign. Again, this is going to just let us really plan for these things in advance. One of these items that we're going to see throughout a couple of different apps here today is going to be our tags. So these are ways to track donor interests and just categories that are spread across multiple different types of objects. And so, for example, by tagging this as part of, our food insecurity through line, if we had donors that we know are interested in supporting food security, that we would make sure that they could get included in these campaigns, and we'd have that information tied together. Where our campaign is kind of our umbrella approach to this particular, everything that we're doing in between our start and end date. We've also got our outreach source codes, so these can capture individual appeals. That's going to be a combination of channel and message and segment. So basically how we're sending out the appeal, what we're saying, and who we're saying it to. And so, for example, if I dig into my email appeal, we can see, again, some summarized information that's even more whittled down to specifically a particular email that went out, and track some information around, source code, if we're having, mail being returned back, making sure that things are tied to their correct appeal and then counted towards that correctly, as well as any notes we want to keep on the details of the particular message that went out. Next, we're going to switch over into our Philanthropy and Partnerships app. So again, this is going to be our major giving officer persona. As we can see here, we've loaded in an entirely new homepage. This has an entirely different dashboard that we're seeing here. That's, again, this is really focused on what a major giving officer would want to see. And so we're seeing some of their portfolio, some information about key donors. Again, we could jump into any of these to view our reports. One of the other items that's new with Nonprofit Cloud are going to be our actionable lists. And so these are ways to group records and easily take action on these. And so we can see a couple that are provided out of the box. We've got our inbound referrals. And so if we had potentially incoming potential prospects, those could be segmented out separately from folks that are already in our major giving officers portfolio. We're going to jump into this list quickly. This will show us kind of some key summarized information for all the records that are getting pulled in, and we can then actually take action on any one of these records. So, for example, if we had talked with Caitlin earlier in the day and we wanted to be able to move her up from prospecting to the next stage, we're able to make those changes right here on that list and see that reflected in our summarized information. We could also potentially reassign, so we can see all of these are assigned to my user right now. We could come in and take action to change these. These are just some of the simple actions that are being able to be taken right out of the box, but then we can then further customize what actions are available from these lists. So if there's bulk actions that need to be taken on portfolio or donors in your portfolio, that can be further built out from some of these pages. I now want to go take a look at an individual donor's record. There's a lot of information on this page. We're going to cover some of them today. If you do have specific components you want to hear more about, feel free to drop a question in the chat and we'll see if there is time for that at the end. But some of the items that I want to make sure get called out are going to be our fundraising timeline. So this is going to really consolidate information across those different gift types that we talked about before. And so in bright green, we can see these are our different gift transactions. So these are actual funds being received from Alex. We can see a recurring gift and see how that is kind of that commitment that's not actual funds received, but it's just saying, okay, is that an active or a no longer active recurring gift? Our crown, our orange crown, is going to be our opportunity. And so we can just see all of those different types of gifts collected here into one timeline, see them chronologically. Next up, I want to call out our action launcher. We're going to see this change when we go into our next app. Right now, as the major giving officer, we can see that these actions are really focused on, again, relationship building, planning and completing constituent interactions, and then updating information if we want to build out a donor portfolio. This button, if I clicked it, would create a relationship between this donor and another person. And so just ways that we can really build out and further understand who this donor is. We also see our tags come back here. And so again, we can see on Alex's record that she's interested in housing support. And so if there's funding opportunities or campaigns that are going out around housing support, we can make sure we can do reporting and make sure that she's getting pulled into those because we've indicated that interest. We can see, similar to our campaign summaries, this is some giving summaries that are, as always, customizable on exactly what is being summarized. Here are some of the fields that are available out of the box. And again, as our major giving officer persona, we can see kind of open, uncompleted activities that we've got planned with Alex. So we know that we want to give her a phone call, we want to invite her to a volunteer day, as well as summaries of completed interactions with her. So again, really focused on that relationship building and the interactions that we're having with these constituents. If we take a look down here, we kind of get into the details of her record. And so we can see this, starting section here is going to be focused on basic demographic and contact information. We've got tabs to further view the opportunities and gifts that we see over here in the timeline, tracking her relationships. One thing that we want to flag is that Salesforce, as we've been saying, is extremely customizable. And so any custom information you need to track will live on the same page as all of our out-of-the-box fields. And so in this example, we've got this custom field, we've got some custom pick list values here. But that is just like living at the same level as all of our kind of standard out-of-the-box fields. This can even be seen if we hop over quickly to another way to view different types of records. This is what's called a list view. We can see that that custom field is just automatically pulled in, and we're able to really, again, customize each of these views so that it's providing the right information at the right time for the right person. The last app that we're going to take a look at today is our Fundraising Operations app. Again, this is going to be focused on our gift processor persona. So we can see here that this doesn't have a dashboard. We are really focused on our recent records, especially focused around these gift batches, since that's where a lot of a gift processor's time is going to be spent, is looking at and processing gifts. And so as part of that, I want to just quickly demonstrate the gift entry process, starting with creating a new batch. So we've got the option to configure different templates for different gift types. These will really streamline, again, showing the correct fields the most relevant fields for different situations at the correct time. We've got options here to provide estimated gift counts and the value of all the gifts that are going to be in our batch. We've got some validation options here around whether or not the total and the actual number and value of gifts needs to be able to match in order to fully process the gift. So that can provide just a little bit of extra security in making sure that your gift information is getting entered accurately. Once a gift batch exists, we can then create new records, new gift entry records for each of the gifts that we're processing in this batch. And so, we've got our split between, is this gift coming in from an individual or an organization or a household? You can quickly find the donor that we're pulling this in from and see some of their, again, basic contact information pulled in directly here. Again, these are the out-of-the-box fields, but any of these can get customized to pull in additional information, and that will all populate however it's populated on their actual donor record. Coming next to our gift receive date, so when did this money come in? Let's say it's yesterday. Out-of-the-box Nonprofit Cloud comes with the ability to check for those gift commitments. So, we are skipping straight to that gift transaction. We're saying this money came in. We didn't know about it in advance, so we're going to process that. But this is a way so we can double check to say, okay, if this is a pledge payment and we knew that we were going to expect $100 on this particular date, that the system is checking to see, okay, do we have any open gift commitments for this amount, for this time period, and we'll help you to match those together. So again, you can have the best data quality for your fundraising information as possible in the system. Coming down here, we can set that outreach source code. And so as you saw, we could potentially search by that source code we set on these, or we could say, okay, we know this was coming in because of that email. That ties it directly back to the campaign. So those outreach summaries that we looked at on the campaign and outreach source code records will have that updated giving information. We have got our payment method. Let's say that this came in as a check. We can see that there's some conditional logic for different methods to potentially pop up additional screens for whatever information you might need to be tracking. Once we provide a gift amount, that will populate this section here that will show where that money is going to get allocated. I'm going to quickly fill these in. So this payment identifier can be used for a check number. It could be the last four of a credit card, depending on what method it is again. Again, we've got a check date tracked there as well. So this could potentially be split if you knew that you wanted, the donor wanted to allocate some of it towards your unrestricted fund, but then some of it towards a particular other fund. That can be done by percentage or by amount. I'm going to leave it off for our demo. And then we've also got the option here to give soft credit for this gift to another, individual or organization in the system. So we could potentially give somebody, credit as being an influencer or a solicitor of a particular gift, depending on how, your organization policies around soft credits. Again, I'm going to leave that off for our demo. We can see here we've entered all the information that we need to. And once we click save, that'll kind of process and then bring us back to the start, so that if we did have, a batch larger than one, we could keep going in and creating those gift entries. In this case, we're going to come here and refresh our batch quickly. And so we can now see this single gift entry. We can see it has a gift processing status of new over here. And so we're going to just quickly show processing that batch and then take a look at those associated gift records. It can take some time for larger batches, but in this case, we refreshed that quickly, and now we're seeing a status of success, which means that you don't just have the gift entry record now, you have the actual gift itself. And so we'll see, this is that gift transaction. If this was something that came, for example, as a pledge payment, we would link back to that gift commitment here. This gift entry record, will continue to exist. It has all that information that we entered, but then we actually want to go over to our gift transaction to see, the amounts. This is the actual gift that's going to get tied back to Alex's record. So again, this is all the information that we entered through gift entry. And now if we head back to Alex's record, we can see that in our timeline, we've got this latest gift. If we come down here we can see that in our gift transactions related list, see all those gifts that are allocated to Alex. One of the other things I want to flag now that we're back on Alex's records, we can see how some of the organizations of different components has changed. For example, we're not seeing tags in the same places we did when we were in the Philanthropy and Partnerships app. And then if we take a look at our action launcher, we see that these actions are now really focused around the tasks that a gift processor might need to do. So managing or closing a gift commitment. So if a recurring donation needs to be updated or ended. And so the Nonprofit Cloud is just very flexible to whatever action the user who's in the system at that moment needs to be able to do. I am going to hand things back over to Kaya now. That brings us to the end of our demo.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Tessa. I'm going to go back to our slides here. Okay, so I'm going to jump to questions, and I'm first going to ask Jennifer and Tessa my own question, which is advice for organizations that are thinking about Nonprofit Cloud, who are really evaluating if this is going to be the right fit for their organizations. So Tessa, I'll start with you. Yeah.
Thanks, Kaya. One of the things that I recommend folks do when considering Nonprofit Cloud is just really think about 3 of your most important or non-negotiable processes that are currently working well in your system, and then take a look at how they would work similarly or different in Nonprofit Cloud, and then do the same with the 3 most frustrating pain points that you're currently facing. That's not going to be a replacement for a full systems evaluation, but should provide a good initial impression on if Nonprofit Cloud is a viable option. And I think that we could talk all day about the technical details of different pieces of functionality. But my other piece of advice kind of turns back around to doing a little bit of organizational preparedness. And so if you're at the point that you're considering implementing a new system, just start to be thinking about your team's readiness and capacity for change. And then when you're thinking about your current processes, don't just think about what you're currently doing on a daily basis, but think about why, so you can start to identify the purpose behind those processes to make sure that those end goals, the outcomes you want to see, can be easily translated into a new system. Jennifer?
Yeah, definitely co-sign everything Tessa just said. But in addition, I think my advice for organizations who are evaluating Nonprofit Cloud is don't feel like you need to adopt everything all at once or implement everything all together. That can get very overwhelming very quickly, and change is hard for any organization of any size or budget level. So Salesforce itself is really designed to be expanded upon and enhanced over time. And even Nonprofit Cloud itself is going through a lot of change right now very quickly. And so it's okay to just take a look at what are its features and strengths and how do they compare to what we need now in that current state and pain points framing that Tessa just gave. It's okay to take your time with it. You don't need to rush anything. And I also really always recommend talk to people. Like, there's a lot of new information coming out all of the time. So be paying attention to announcements from Salesforce. You can start looking at release notes for seeing what's coming up in the most next upcoming release. Start talking to your peers, start talking to a Salesforce AE, start talking to Hel Consulting. There's a lot of organizations who are in the exact same boat and trying to figure out what is our best path forward right now. And so the best way to figure out, you don't want to recreate the wheel and totally carve out an uncharted path by yourself. That's very scary. So just talk to people and start figuring out, what have other organizations done successfully? What did you learn from the process? Where did you start with and what happened next? Like I said, you don't have to do everything all in one fell swoop. And that being said, if you are thinking about Salesforce, if you have some key questions that would help you make decisions about if Nonprofit Cloud is right for you, what should the timing be for an implementation, where do I start, what do I prioritize, definitely get in touch with Heller. We're here to help you with what those next steps are, no matter where you are in the process. Kaya is going to provide some contact information at the end of the slide deck to help you get in touch with us, but I guarantee we've seen all shapes and sizes. We've seen nonprofits going through all degrees of technology change over the years, and we have both strategy services as well as implementation services to help, meet you where you are in that process and help you figure out what the next step should be.
Absolutely. For the sake of time, I'm going to go. We do have time for a couple of questions that were submitted by you all, so thank you. I will get to those here very briefly. Before we wrap up with the questions, I'm going to give you that contact information that Jennifer just mentioned in case some of you have to jump for your next call. But we have a interactive guide and proposal assessment that we've put together specifically for organizations that are thinking about leaving Razor's Edge and going over to Salesforce. I'm going to put that link in our chat here, but I'll also be sending it out tomorrow. But it's a guide that kind of walks you through some of the common functionalities of Salesforce Nonprofit Cloud, how that translates to Razor's Edge and vice versa, and talks a little bit more about the migration and what that looks like. It also gathers some information about your use of Razor's Edge. And then a Heller expert would be getting back in touch with you to kind of go over your results of the assessment. And then we also have on the screen here Justin, who is one of our business development folks. If you want to get in touch with him, if you have any questions, his email address is right here on the screen. And again, I'll send this out tomorrow as well. But let's see, we have a couple minutes left, so let's go to questions. All right, let's start with how much customization is needed before and ongoing? Jennifer, Tessa, I don't know who wants to take that one.
I can go first. There's no one right answer to that. It really is going to depend on how you're using your systems, your legacy systems today, and what you're trying to use Salesforce to do, and how closely your processes align with some of the features, like both those that Tessa was able to demo and the ones that we just described without having time for demos. And if you're willing to adapt your business processes to be closer to the out-of-the-box features, then you're going to need less customization in the system. But if your business processes might be more inflexible for whatever reason, then you might need more customization. So Salesforce customers are all over the map in terms of how much they need to customize the platform or configure the platform, or how little. I think that Salesforce is always trying to cast the widest net in the features that it releases in each of these releases. So we saw a lot of features for these different key personas that are very common across nonprofit organizations of different sizes or different missions or verticals. So they're trying to make things that the majority of the industry is going to be able to adopt pretty quickly without needing much customization. But as Tessa showed, it's always very simple to create a custom field, which would be the equivalent of adding attributes to the Razor's Edge. And those are immediately available in reports and on page layouts, and just embedding those into your overall business processes and your flow in the system. So I think it's safe to assume everyone needs at least a little bit of configuration, but the sky's the limit on how far you want to take that.
And I think just quickly going back to Jennifer's advice is that it doesn't need to all be at once. There's a certain amount that you'll need to do to get started, but then you can continue to kind of build out and refine customizations as you're getting settled into a new system.
We have time for one more. So let's do, when planning ahead, what is the best time to convert to a new system, and for this person specifically for a school that's planning ahead?
Also a great question, and also there's no one right answer to that question. We've had a lot of educational institutions implement Salesforce, not necessarily nonprofit cloud, but just a variety of Salesforce products. And I think that some common considerations for timing are, do you have any like expiring licenses or contracts with your current vendors, like looking at those expiration dates and seeing what would that mean for a project timeline if we were to move off of the Razor's Edge or another legacy system by the contract expiration date on X date. There's also, I think a lot of schools try to put more like internal infrastructure project work like this into the summer because their staff might be less busy with supporting students directly during the academic year and what that looks like for them. That's not going to be a one-size-fits-all approach, so that may or may not work for you. Some organizations try to target and align their launch of the new system with the beginning of their fiscal year. So that's a really common consideration as well. But remember that these projects are not going to be like an overnight, now we flip the switch and now you're in the new system. So it's not just planning. You have to plan like, when does the project start and when are we trying to launch, and figure out how much can we fit into that time frame without completely overwhelming our staff, because it does take a lot of input and collaboration, and we want our customers to be, involved in the process. We want them to understand what they're adopting, what it will mean for their users, and provide input along the way. So it's definitely an all hands on deck type of project approach.
Awesome. Well, we are at the top of the hour. For those of you that also submitted questions, we didn't get to them. I apologize, and we'll find a way to get some answers over to you. But thank you all so much for joining us. Thanks to Jennifer and Tessa, and I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your Thursday.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.